I have one now too. I should have got mine.
Wait, everyone's got Grogu's now? Oh my goodness.
Just sit here on my front porch and catch frogs.
I guess I'll just
You
have to
know.
be cute enough on my own.
Oh,
Well, you are.
Here we go.
Jeff,
Ride the mic, buddy.
just start for the entire
There we
episode.
go.
Just go. No. Yes.
No,
Yes.
no,
Yes.
no.
Here we go.
Or I'll talk like Pedro Pascal.
Oh my gosh, Ray.
Very
Just went through
Let me
slowly.
go after my
Went through a
kid
thrilling
now.
experience and can't bring the timber up more than
Thanks,
Yeah.
buddy.
Well,
the
really
ADR recorder
appreciate
better
your
get a
help.
bonus for this one.
he called R5 buddy like 19 times in this. movie. I'm
Exactly.
like, eh,
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, it's like, since when are they buddies?
I don't know.
Next
actually-
level. Now, please. It's
I didn't know the whole
dramatic.
pod.
This is
Okay.
dramatic.
I'm afraid, Dave.
I'm, Pedro Pascal. It was revealed, I guess, in some of the news that's come out in the last few weeks that, the two actors that are usually in the suit when he's not available, they were working overtime this season, and he was literally like recording his lines. He wasn't on
Probably.
set a lot, so he was literally phoning in his performance.
Well, that was my question, was like, how much of him is really in there? I can't, to this day, I still can't believe they really made that choice to say, like, we're going to cast this name actor, even though he was a little bit of a cult name before this,
Mhm.
and never show him. I
I'm
mean,
sure.
he's, and we see, Katie all the time in this show,
We do.
and dozens and dozens of people with their helmets off in the last episode, and yet he doesn't take it off for a second in the last episode.
I
think
figured
there's a reason.
quiet on the
I
cabin.
know, but
there was
but
going to be a
it's-
coda shot of the helmet off, but
you think they'd rewrite that knowing what a big star he is and everything, and
especially
I
now.
don't know.
I'm
Especially
sure.
Other
sure-
people being shown.
I'm sure while he was in between takes of the new Almodovar movie, he was just recording lines for this season.
Sure. Maybe
Is
with
he
a
in the new
little more
Almodovar
cadence,
movie?
right?
Yeah, him and Ethan Hawke.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
I know which one you mean. Okay.
all right.
It's a gay cowboy movie.
Yeah, I think so.
Aren't they
But
all?
are they eating pudding? No. All right. So,
Lately,
We'll have a gay old
time. I was
Wilma. Bum.
That was
Oh,
Fred
I missed that
exclaiming
show.
when he caught Wilma and Betty. All right. Listen.
You said in.
Oh no.
You said in.
Little
Welcome
Freudian
to
slip.
this show is already off the rails, but I think that's
Are you
just
surprised?
thematically in keeping with this whole damn season of Mandalorian.
how
I
we
am
feel.
I'm upset, guys. I need your help
You go first.
getting through this.
Yes.
Hit the button. Hit the button.
Look, I think there was only one
No,
episode. It was
no.
the filler episode from a couple weeks ago, the one I called the filler episode.
Yeah.
But every other installment, every other chapter, as David likes to remind me, of this season 3, I have been a staunch defender. Some
Oh,
more
you
than
have.
others.
It's true.
Oh,
Some I've said this is the best. This is great Star Wars, and
Uh-huh.
others like I feel like they're building to something. If what I've heard is true, I had heard that the season 4 of Mandalorian has been written but not greenlit.
Well, boy.
And the enthusiasm and a lot of the chatter online, and certainly what I've seen of the ratings, wouldn't suggest this is a winning horse for a 4th season. So it's possible that we get this wrapped up in whatever that Dave Filoni movie is coming out. The Avengers Endgame of Star Wars, as it were. But and I looking at the end. Oh wait, hold on a second. I got to put up the banners.
Ooh, titty!
Not it's a family show, but the last shot of this episode of this season is, as David alluded to, Mando kicking back on his new porch while Grogu plays in the yard. This is like if they needed to end it here, they could end it here, and I feel like that was a very calculated thing because they're like, I
Mhm.
don't know if anyone's coming back.
Just
to this.
in case, right? Yeah.
So,
Just be the hottest show on TV, and just like half a decade later or whatever, we're
Then-
down to this.
the next season will be like a remake of Unforgiven. Grogu will come over and go, this one's got the fever too, Pa!
Right. Grogu will be burying the Mandalorian stone by stone with the Force, like while Claudia's theme is
Claudia's
going on
theme.
from Lenny.
Doom,
You know.
doom, 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 doom.
No, Grogu and Mando fall on hard times, so Grogu goes to a brothel and ends up get all cut up by this bandit. No,
Got to go to
so-
the dark side of Unforgiven,
Episode of Ted
huh?
Lasso.
Okay, yeah.
well, hey, it wouldn't be with the Darksaber because that's no longer a thing.
point.
Let's
Boy,
just
that-
jump all over the place here tonight.
Stop it.
Like Grogu fighting, like Grogu fighting Gideon or the Praetorian Guards.
Guards,
Those red
yeah.
dudes.
Yeah, I've forgotten most of this episode. So, Jeff, would you be so kind as to summarize?
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. It felt a lot like sort of fan fiction in a way. I mean, they returned to some of the very good things in Star Wars, but well, I mean, I think some of the action was fun in the Force, and I like the protective dome, sort of keeping the family unit there intact, mom, dad, and the kid. Let me see if I can summarize this fairly quickly. Moff Gideon returns. He's sort of in control. The other Mandalorians have escaped, and they're trying to get a counter defense going, which they do. There's all kinds of Empire fighters sent out to shoot at them in space, and we've got sort of the front on three different places, up in the air with the dogfight, and then also with the Mandalorian sort of trying to get Moff Gideon along with Boca, and then sort of a retreat kind of in sorts. And Grogu is there as a fighter now, which is interesting. He's in the action and not just pressing the yes, 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 or no, no, no buttons, but he is actually in sort of the mix of it. And to sort of summarize it quickly, because I know we'll get into more of it later, they defeat Moff Gideon by basically doing the thing that Laura Dern did in the one Star Wars movie, where they crashed the sort of flaming big fighter, or whatever the hell it was, into the planet to sort of destroy Moff Gideon's world and set him ablaze. But then Grogu saves the Boca and Jin after their the Mando, after their sort of fight, and the sword gets destroyed, which is a very unceremonious ending to that sort of really key weapon. But everything turns into a fireball from hell. Grogu finally sort of uses his force to protect mom and dad, if you will, and the armorer is not the villain, not a spy. So last episode was mistitled. It should have just been spy, because it's not really spies.
Well, who was the spy, though? I hate to pull
plural.
everybody.
Well, I think the spy was Kane, Elia Kane from a long time ago. She was the only one that, and we knew that episodes ago there, because spies would suggest there were a couple fronts going on with maybe some secret spies. I made I thought a good guess that in any other world would have probably said, yeah, that makes sense that the armor is playing both sides against the middle and she's now going to be exposed. But nope, she was perfectly good. She's leading in the hand-to-hand combat fight, which was the other front that sort of was this battle of the Mandalorians against the evil Empire and the people from Moff Gideon. And even, Grogu sort of saved the day, not only saving mom and dad, but he also defeated a number of baddies with the Force, including those red special whatever they call the
Praetorian Guards.
The Praetorian Guards, right. I was going to say it made sort of quick, easy work of them, and it ends on a ridiculously happy note with everybody sort of alive and well and resting and retired, and all the rumors about somebody's going to die. There's going to be this real tragic heartfelt ending. I mean, I read somewhere that they thought Grogu was going to take one to the chest, but he'll be spared because remember he had the plate that he was wearing and all that. None of that came to fruition. So that's essentially it's funny in asking me to describe the plot. I think it shows how kind of rudimentary and almost like, I dare say, like a sophomore kid in high school's writing a story about it versus the big professional that Jon Favreau is. It didn't strike me as a very sophisticated script and a rather rushed ending. My God, Moff Gideon is in it, and then suddenly he's done away with, and he doesn't get any great big dialogue or any real good scenes or anything else that would suggest he maybe could last and
just a monologue,
hang out. Nobody else is brought in. There's nobody else that sort of even sets up the
there's no mention
the
of
next
Thrawn.
season. Nothing about Prawn. Nothing about no Rosario Dawson cameo. I was expecting maybe something in there. No Boba Fett.
Whales?
Right.
And then the big what's the big creature?
The mythosaur.
The mythosaur gets a nice little sort of.
He opens his eyes.
Am I being called by that little urchin? But I mean, what was all that set up about? I mean, a lot of things being set up for not a particularly lot of payoff in this finale.
Well, okay, let's start off with the Darksaber.
Yeah.
Because I've been thinking about this and I don't want to forget it. Does it light up, David? Is that
I
real?
love that you guys are dressed in the Hawaiian
It's
I
like
didn't even
Magnum
plan
PI
that.
out here. Yeah.
Mando's retired, kind of 90-degree weather.
That was my goal.
Hey,
Yeah.
I've got my black Star Wars shirt on because I feel like I'm at a funeral for a beloved franchise.
So you guys match and we match. Look at that.
There
Yeah,
you go.
see?
Look at this.
And you guys have Grogu's and we don't. Wow, this is weird. But okay, the dark saber.
Rip.
I've not been that familiar with like the Clone Wars and all of Rebels and all this stuff, but I understand it's been around for a while. It was a Filoni invention
Right.
that has been kind of this MacGuffin that has shown up here and there, and it certainly played a big part in Mandalorian going back to the end of season 1. And I was listening to something online. They're pointing out that Moff Gideon always shows up at the end of each season. He's kind of like this presence, and then he reveals himself, and there's some kind of a skirmish or whatever. But in this one, he literally gets into the fight with Bo-Katan, and he grabs the saber and crushes it in his hand. Now, I guess it's because he's got the new Beskar armor or whatever, but this is before we even get to that. When they start their fight, he says something like, you're never going to win. Why don't you just give me the dark saber now? And I'm like,
how many times has he asked her for that too?
But here's the thing. He has to know that's not how it works.
Yeah.
We've established it has to be one. It can't be given to someone. So what is he even doing?
That I know that shows again, like like a kid would have written it in sophomore year of high school, like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot about that. Is anybody checking the boxes, or is that writer's room saying, by the way, we have to, here's the lore of that sword, we can't say that, it has to be earned, No, it seems like this is the first draft, and kind of that's what got shot.
At that point, I wish she would have said one of my most irksome lines in cinema. You just don't get it, do you?
That'd be good. Petulant teen to the end. Yep.
Yeah.
Which were preceded by, we better get the hell out of here.
That's
Right.
And I was saying that after
got
the
it.
Going down. Yeah.
But no, Dave Filoni, I know Favreau wrote this episode, but Filoni couldn't have given his creative input because he was too busy being fitted for the space age cowboy hat. Did you pick him up on his cameo in the bar at the end?
Yeah.
So, cowboy hat in space. That's great.
Sure.
There's this episode. First of all, it's one of the shorter ones. It's only like 35 minutes.
39 minutes. Yeah, that's right. With credits, it was
too fast. Yeah.
Way too fast.
Yeah.
They could have,
especially if you're packing the 3-layer conclusion that you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
There's just no way to resolve this. And I don't feel like I was just so checked out. Like describing it, you've got 75 Mandalorians in jetpacks flying up into the atmosphere to fight 100 troopers, and I'm like, I just feel like I'm watching karaoke balls bounce off of each other.
But it should be edge of your seat stuff. Like you should
really,
be watching going, oh, here they come.
And really, none of them really got injured, and and nobody's saying anything about what's his name, Paz Vizsla. It's like, oh yeah, he's gone.
Waiting for Paz.
No memorial or anything.
Right.
Yeah. The big
and those
if he had just followed them out the door, then he would have been guaranteed to live because none of the other Mandos died.
Well, and there's only 3 of those guards, the red guards.
I guess so.
I mean, that's the other thing too, is like, how sparingly, it wasn't a very well thought out return. I mean, even though they've got the new armor and stuff. I also say, I felt that this one, again, I hate to keep calling it like a fanboy's first draft from in high school, but in the original Star Wars, a lot of times they would do things like in Return of the Jedi, there was a lot of cross cutting between the sort of 3 big battles going on, right? I mean, the Ewoks, and that's kind of a Star Wars thing here. But here it doesn't work because there's not enough drama in each of those, and those things lasted probably the better part of 40 minutes in the movie. Where here it's like taking up the better part of 15 minutes.
4 minutes.
It's like maybe the last act at best.
Wolves is like, I'm out of here.
And it's all done too quickly. A lot of it looked good, and a lot of it was some sexy stuff. I mean, all those the dog fights and all that. But man, you could go to Disney World and get on that ride, and you feel that those things are going to hit you more than you did really any sense of them being dangerous here. I just was kind of shocked how light this was. And Grogu sort of has his one moment where he's fighting and he's running around, and you worry that he's going to survive, but of course he is, because you can't do that. Can you imagine that? But even that wasn't necessarily inspired. It was kind of basic stuff. He lifts them, he moves some metal around, he does the dome. Great shot there, and they really milked that, which is probably the highlight of the film.
The dome bothered me because I was so self-conscious of, I'm just watching the end of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie where Groot forms the giant protective thing. I mean, it's Disney, and it's just again
felt familiar.
Yeah. Don, jump in here. What did you like? What were your thoughts throughout this episode? Were you engaged? Were you detached? Does it register? Are you curious about season 4 at all?
I'm curious about
about what? Sorry,
I think about the balloons behind him. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's a long story. I'll tell you next.
Okay, I think.
To your 3 questions, yes, and no. Yes, I was engaged. I was into it enough. I liked, let's see what, I mean, it's Giancarlo Esposito. So I know his presence alone elevates a good finale of a villain throwdown. The individual fight scene of the 3 things between Mandalorian and Bo was visceral and good, just brutal punches, brutal moves, things like that. I enjoyed that. So I was engaged there. Obviously the Mandalorian, the blizzard of fight that's elsewhere. Okay, it was fun to see the armor throw down. It was fun to see the Mandalorians take their home planet. I know they had that little breather in the gardens. I don't get why we're going there for fun. I mean, just halftime, guys.
Genesis,
yeah, totally.
You did a good job here.
I mean, there's interesting.
I feel young. I feel young.
No, there's interesting characters there. And I think the other engagement part was I enjoyed seeing Captain Uppa from Kim's Convenience at the end, and whatever deal they can throw, having that come back. I know we questioned the cameos at different places, but Mandalorian working for the New Republic is intriguing. Is it intriguing enough to go for another season and get him off that porch? And no, if they stop right here and you see him again in the movie 2-3 years from now with an improved Grogu and a more weathered Mandalorian, and if that's when you bring him back, because I think they've wrung the sponge out of using him too often. I mean, he already invaded the Book of Boba Fett. If you were to bring him in for a 2-episode arc of Ahsoka, you would feel like you're reaching. So if this is the spot you stop, that's plenty. Because what are they going to do next? Another go find 3 pieces of the puzzle before the quest gets to here, and maybe get on a mythosaur. We've seen all the stuff.
Where's the threat? I mean, if you don't mind me chiming in, just to build on that for a second. My big question after watching this is, where's the threat now? Because the whole start of the series was the idea that they were going to use Grogu's blood to help him develop these sort of unvanquishable guard that were going to have the Force blood and be able to do all these things. And we even got a hint of that with those Moff Gideon clothes in the clone chamber, and yet the Mando takes them out like that. And I thought, what they could have done, and again, this is sort of basic screenwriting, but you get a good actor like Giancarlo Esposito, and you barely give him 10 minutes of real legitimate screen time here. Okay, have his original one, or the one that we see fighting, get lost in the flames, but then the button should have been, here's
one clone makes
200 of them. 200. There's 200 of them. He's not only fashioned the super soldier with the Jedi blood from Grogu, but they're all Moff Gideon. So it's like his evil mentality. But where's his big plan? He was going to do all this stuff. He's laying in wait. He's not done away with. And then he comes back and, in 10 minutes, all those chambers are gone and vanquished. And he's like, you killed them, you suffocated them from even the drew their first breath. It's kind of like the plot, before we even had a chance to react to. Oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. A big chamber of Moff Gideons. Oh, but now they're gone. Okay. I'm shocked that somebody didn't say, wait a minute, don't kill off these things, because that's a good idea. That's the button, or that's the 4th season or something. But it seems so hasty, I guess, is the ultimate thing.
Or just the simple idea, pause for effect.
Yeah.
Linger here for a minute, and the only place I guess they lingered in that silly garden, and they lingered for a half second in the room with the clones before they torched them, but linger more. Let the clone room be episode 9, let the gardens be episode 8. Go stretch that out, I don't know.
Didn't they watch Alien Resurrection? I mean, we got to see some mistakes,
I honestly, before we got a good look at
Ex
the clones in
Machina.
there, I thought they were gonna, for some reason, gonna have some. Oh my gosh, what was
Snoke?
the Snoke? Yeah, I thought
Snokey
Yeah.
doke.
I thought we were gonna
That'd
get
be
a glimpse of like proto
Yeah.
Snoke.
Yes.
You know, I like what you're saying, Don, about those clones. I think it would have been more interesting if they were revealed that those clones were kind of fully cooked, and at the end, Mando is not so much defeated, like he doesn't get his butt kicked. But what if you have 100 of those Moff Gideon clones all taking off in TIE fighters and going to the disparate parts of the galaxy?
Mhm.
So, because we always, at least I've always thought of the clones in terms of the clone troopers, right? You got the stormtroopers and everything, but when you get to like the Imperial, like the upper class
Management
they're
level.
Management.
yeah,
Management level.
upper management, those are sort of like spare bodies. So like you've got 100 of them. So if like this one dies, you have one more and you keep replacing them. But what if they were all activated and they're all kind of linked? Or, I mean, I know this breaks canon, but what if there were clones in Star Wars, like Imperial leadership that were clones of each other that got into like a civil war dispute, like this Moff Gideon is fighting this Moff Gideon is fighting, it's got like what they were going to do with Kang, I think, until certain things happen. But there's so much possibility here. And I think they went with not even just high school writing, Jeff, because I think you mentioned, maybe what Don mentioned, they had that the mesh armor that they set up in episode 2 or 3, right?
Yeah.
So the smart screenwriter, even though it's the laziest thing,
You call it back,
work
though.
because I'll take lazy over whatever the hell this was. Roga gets shot and he's okay because he's got the mesh armor.
Well, and it's funny too, because Gideon's supposed to be this formidable villain, right? And, Esposito's a formidable actor given the right material. And they rush his entrance and he's almost talking a mile a minute like he's Harold Hill and got to get the next train out of town before they figure out his boy band scheme. And then he's got this chamber of all of him being recreated. And I love the idea of sending his maniacal self to all the corners of it to make sure his great plan comes to fruition. And they're all like me, so I know they're going to follow my plan. And they're just done away with. And it's like, who would think that's good storytelling?
Eggs
you
in a
come up with
basket,
this
right?
great idea. Yeah, you come up with this clever idea that's worthy of a clever villain, and then he's like, you, it's
And you
almost-
ruined everything.
I mean, he wasn't much better than Dr. Evil, It's like,
Exactly.
and then we're going to have sharks with lasers. So you're going to tell me what you're going to do. Why don't you just shoot me?
Yeah.
The-
Monologuing. It's bad.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I feel like this episode had the worst versions of great moments we'd had earlier on in the season. Like
Agreed.
Moff Gideon, I thought last week when he was talking to that sort of holographic
Shadow
Imperial
Council.
Council, the
Yeah,
Shadow
very well
Council,
done.
that was wonderful
That
stuff.
was good stuff.
We had a couple of dogfights, space battles earlier on the season that were much more exciting than anything we got here. I mean, I was kind of relieved that when Axe Woves was doing the pseudo holdo maneuver, I thought it was cool that he actually thought, I don't actually have to die on this thing. I could just leave.
It's now the Woves maneuver.
Oh, Woves is me.
Yeah.
And then okay, so what was the name? I'm forgetting all of this Star Wars stuff. I apologize, but the shiny armored lady from the
Captain
sequel. Phasma. Okay.
Nice, David.
Gideon
Gwendolyn
pulled a
Christie.
Phasma in this. Engulfed in flames, never
She's
to be
gone.
seen again until the next movie.
Goodbye.
Right. Gideon's coming back. I mean, we lost Captain Phasma in the climax of Last Jedi, and then she's hanging out in Rise of, or no, was it Force Awakens that she fell into the pit thing?
The Last Jedi.
No, it's Just Jedi.
Okay,
Yeah.
but she's back in Rise of Skywalker. We're going to see Moff Gideon again because, look, I wouldn't be surprised if that was actually his death because it was so unceremonious and poorly done that it fits right in with the rest of the season. But
it's totally a Snoke move. You build him up, and then he's gone. And it's like we just take him off the playing board, and I'm sure Esposito was like, "I'm out of here. You only have me for a couple episodes."
The check clear, Disney. Thanks.
I started to ask halfway through as I was realizing, because the screener said 39 minutes and you knew that was going to be 4 minutes of credits, whether they rushed this because somebody came along and said mid-season or mid-writing this show for this season, hey, we're going to do a movie and you got to save some of the stuff for a movie. Because it seemed like they just collapse so many things here. I mean, even like, for example, other opportune moments, I'll just give you two quick that I was sort of surprised. Again, I'm not saying this is screenwriting 101, but you set up Boca as this new person, this new hero. She's leading the Mandalorians, and she gets wounded rather severely, and so she's not invincible, even though she's been set up as the great leader. She should have died in this episode. Good screenwriting would have had her die. Like, this is the sacrifice. Somebody has to go, and it's her. You think, oh, she's the new future. Nope. She's, it's just like Steven Seagal and executive decision. You're not going to make it. No, but you will. And then suddenly Kurt Russell is on his own. It's like, now I got to be Steven Seagal. Shit. Wow. I love that kind of thing, but that doesn't happen here. They also set up some great little moments of wit that Jon Favreau stopped when he came up with it. Yes, no. Like, there's one scene that was like, well, he can't be a Mandalorian because he can't speak yet. Cue the kid, and the kid goes, fuck you, or something. And he actually says his first line, and it isn't daddy, it's fuck you. I mean, the little creature said motherfucker last week, right? Sorry, I know this is a family show.
Frack you.
But they missed an opportunity to give Grogu a great line there. It's like, wow, you guys are not really sort of bringing your A game to this finale.
Or
I was shocked that those missed opportunities.
I wasn't shocked when he missed opportunities. Like the voice of Ving Rhames from the Arby's commercials, like, I'm the Mandalorian, we have the meats. Like, that'd be great,
Wow.
Instead, he says buddy all the time. He goes, hey, buddy, I need you to drop that fourth shield now. Hey, buddy, I'm waiting. Buddy.
He's like a South Park Canadian. Hey, buddy.
He couldn't have been more laid back. I mean, that guy is
he was narcotized during this whole episode.
If he's that casual about all that shit going down.
The clones and the whole hallway of clones, the whole hallway of the red screens with the dudes with the Beskar armor, the bad dudes. It's like, why is all that so easy to get through for our protagonists? It's like, oh my gosh, we're in a hallway of clones. Oh, let's just turn them off. Oh, cow, we got to go through all these levels.
They did have the Phantom Menace laser walls that were kind of, but even then, I didn't like. It wasn't
open the middle ones and just walk through.
Well, what's funny is those laser walls was like, how about cut off the oxygen in the room?
Yeah,
and then
but that wouldn't have worked for Grogu though.
Those bad guys, they just stand there on each side of the wall. What do they do all day?
Yeah.
Well, Disney's cutting back, so they couldn't afford them to actually move and emote. I want to talk briefly about, and I guess I wasn't kidding. I'm jumping all around here, so apologies. But at the end, I feel like the Mando season 3 had a Quantum Leap ending. I loved Quantum Leap, and I was very excited and kind of sad when that show ended. I think I was 13 or something, but it was all like, okay, Sam Beckett has been jumping through time, going into all these different bodies and changing history for, I don't know if it was on for a decade, but it was on for quite a while.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, okay, this is the series finale. How are they going to wrap it up? And Sam Beckett meets God, and there's this whole thing. I haven't seen it in 30 years.
Spoiler alert.
Well, I didn't say I'm going to say how it ends now, but I've got the banner on, so sorry. But at the end, I think he walks into a light or something like that. And then there's a postscript thing, and it says, Sam Beckett continued jumping through time and having adventures. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Then let me see them. What are you in the show for? And this one, it's like, okay, Mando is, first of all, he's going to work for the New Republic. And I couldn't help but laugh because I was like, oh, he's going to become a journalist now. But anyhow, he
on decides, a case-by-case assignment thing.
Yeah. He's going to be like a freelance bounty hunter, but that he's kicking back, and like, I want to see those adventures, but there should be like on a case-by-case basis. And then, Grief Karga says, well, I've got your first assignment here. And then they're just like immediately off. Like, he doesn't have time to go and kick back. I don't want to see Mando sipping lemonade on the porch.
Right. The lady in 4B needs her air conditioning fixed.
I totally
That's the
do.
job that Grief Karga has for her. Yeah.
I want to see something like
the rent is late, Mando.
Yeah. A whole episode
you better do
like,
a job.
Hey,
you better do a job like you're Rockford.
Yes, around here, buddy. Got an association right
He's
here.
the Rockford Files now.
David,
Yeah, I want to see a whole episode of like, Terrence Malick type thing where he's like, caressing grain and stuff and just chilling out. And they really blew it that last shot because I wanted to see like how a kid rides his bike and just leaves it on the ground and it's all.
Yeah.
That's how they should have done that IG droid. It just like when he's not in it, they should have just been on the side of the little or leaning up against the.
And then Mando's like, pick up your shit in the yard, son.
He levitates it, put it
Clean
away.
this mess up.
I was a defender for a great deal of the season about the core idea
know.
here.
Mm-hmm.
Listen,
Hey, me
David,
too.
A second, David. At least I know when the show starts.
Whoa. What? No.
Sometimes he comes in late. I'm just saying, time management.
It's that.
Anyway.
Hey.
I love David. I can tease him because, well, he teases me. Okay, to me, the core idea here was a fairly simple one. Grogu has returned to the Mandalorian, and he's now got to take care of sort of the rest of his tutelage. And he is going to learn, sort of like Anna sings in The King and I, that when you become a teacher by your students, you'll be taught. So it's a learning experience and a growth experience for both of them. And there are scenes where they started that. Famously, the scene with the bar that used to be a rough and tumble place that Mando liked to shoot up and mix it up. And now it's a school, and he's not going to let it be taken over by the pirates. That was one of those things. And he's laying back, not being the first to shoot, sort of be mature about it. And yet when there's the real threat and Grogu is standing there too, potentially being threatened, he acts. That kind of tract was what this could have been, I think, this whole season, and just sort of this interesting character study with some battles and, the inevitability of Moff Gideon coming back, whatever. But they went off in different tangents with, the spies and the different fighters and the charity work for Jack Black and all these different things that none of this mattered. It seemed like it was going to come to some sort of thing where, hot damn, they'll do an hour and a half in the last episode, and somehow this will all come together because Favreau's a very good storyteller. But he just let all these themes, and there are about 6 or 7 of them, die on the vine. And this one is just done so hastily. It's like, well, I guess Gideon wasn't the threat that he said he was, because he seemed to be easily vanquished. Even his many clones that he was spending years to try to perfect. And that whole inciting incident of the creation of this series was to clone with Grogu's Jedi blood. Nope, now that's all gone. What? The storytelling breakdown is shocking. I mean, I know Star Wars fans tend to stand up at these conventions and ask about minutia, but to me, these are storytelling 101 problems that, as a veteran filmmaker and creator of these first couple of seasons of this show that were so sterling, he should know much better.
Well,
shame on him.
What would
I don't know why.
Be,
That's the thing is, I don't know why.
What would a show be without a special guest appearance?
There he is.
Of course.
I thought that said pervy man for a minute.
Thank you.
How you doing, pervy man? What's going on?
Great.
Now to the pervy man.
Now I'm pervy man from now on. Okay, I'll take it. Oh, that's fine.
Just to the end of the show.
Okay.
The Erotic Thriller collection still on Criterion this week, guys. Yeah.
What's that? What's on Criterion?
Erotic Thriller collection they got going on Criterion channel.
Oh, okay. Mark.
Yeah.
Did you watch the finale?
I did. What? Wait. That's what we're talking about.
Indian film? No.
Not
this time.
No, he's here for the second show of the night, which we don't have one. So,
damn.
So Mark, we had a great time making fun of the last episode, not so much watching the last episode, but want to get your thoughts. Were you a fan of this? How do you think it kind of wrapped things up for the season and possibly the series, depending on how things go with Disney and ratings and movies and such?
He being a Star Wars fan since I was 2.5 years old when I saw it in the theater, this had all the elements that you would think would make you happy to be a Star Wars fan when you watch it, but you don't. It's meh. You're like, eh. And I was trying to think about this because I was listening to you guys on my phone when I was going to get my kid from work.
Somebody's
you guys made a lot of great points about missed opportunities. These storylines that they breeze through in this finale are things that they should have been focusing on at least halfway through the season. You start off with, as Jeff was saying in the first few episodes when we were reviewing, you're talking about where you still start off with the father-son dynamic, protecting Grogu, leading him properly. Because what that would lead to then is then you start to tease more of, after the episode that didn't have Mando in it pretty much for the whole thing, where we saw about the Imperial reforming, you should have gone. Yeah, you should have gone from that to like, what was it, episode 7 or wherever, where, you know, where they're requesting a support for the Mando. You know, he jump ahead and keep that storyline going and work more in the Moff Gideon and introduce those clone ideas sooner, because unfortunately they pull the horror movie thing to where they build up like a big monster or something and it freaking literally dies within 30 seconds, or this really cool weapon that you have, it ends up dying. You know, they missed a lot of opportunities, including a Grogu story arc, which would have been beautiful for the next season. Here you have Mando being threatened, right? You've got Moff Gideon. Instead of Grogu going, oh, push, Grogu goes, oh, I'm going to implode you and crunch these guys into tin cans because he's a teenager protecting Mando. Now you have Grogu has killed someone. Now it's in defense. It's defense. It's in defense of Mando, but he's done.
Well, he's grown up.
He's grown.
He would have grown up, really, you know, by that act.
Mando sees this, gets scared, and now you've got a dynamic for the whole rest of the season. Sure, they still go on adventures, but now he's wondering, what's he got to do to get Grogu not to kill people?
We need to talk about Grogu.
Hey, Grogu, I'd like to go over and have some, stop and get some food. Are you okay with that? Like suddenly he's afraid to pause him.
What do you want for dinner?
What do you want for dinner? Whatever you want.
I'll restock the pond with frogs. Just
like what was the episode from the Twilight Zone?
It's a good one.
Bill Mummy and you know, you don't want to cross the kid.
Don, you made that gesture with the hands when Mark was talking about like doing something, imploding Gideon. That would have been a nice kind of call, I guess, back, but a cosmic one to like Darth Vader, you know, like the Force choke and all that stuff. But that would have been really creepy and also kind of sad and scary and out of left field.
Yeah.
You know,
Disney doesn't throw that deep from left field anymore. Like you saw how sanitized and safe so much of this season was, where if you're not gonna have heroes die other than an episode ago, you're not gonna have your cute character that sells action figures crush a motherfucker. It's just not gonna happen.
Let's be honest, he didn't finish his training with Luke, just like Luke didn't finish his training with Yoda. True. So why wouldn't he have some of the same struggles that Luke did with the, you know, balancing the dark side with everything, dealing with emotions and connections with people.
But we've also we've also seen some fairly untrained Jedi who get very angry and have seriously destroyed things because they were. I'm just saying, this Grogu is supposed to be a fairly powerful Jedi from what we've been introduced, even at his young age. So even if he doesn't consciously do it, subconsciously he ends up getting the power to, you know.
See, I don't want to rewrite this here as we're talking about. We've talked about this sometimes before. We've come up with a better idea as we're talking about this. Yeah. But see, to build off of what you guys were saying, which I really like that. Like if Grogu sensed that Mando was really in trouble, like he was maybe on the verge of getting defeated, and suddenly, without even realizing it, you know, has the power to stop that guy. And let's say it was Moff Gideon who was doing it and crushes him like a can, or even, you know, dare I say, takes his head off, takes his head off. And suddenly Grogu goes like, wow, you know, shit, did I do that? And everybody in the audience is like that. And then you cut to the chamber of all the Gideon clones, and then that's when their eyes open up because they know that their core temporal brain thing has been defeated, and suddenly and then you realize, oh, that's what he had in mind, and there's still a bunch of those left, and that's why he wanted Grogu, because he does have this incredible Jedi blood. And the clones are going to be there to fight another day. You don't have to vanquish them all. The Mando could have thought that he vanquished Moff Gideon without realizing that he left 100 clones untouched that he didn't know about. That's the kind of clever writing that I would have almost expected from Favreau, who's done that in seasons before and Iron Man and other places. And I just don't understand why this one felt so sort of pedantic and basic. Lots of great production values again, but
Totally.
But
Yeah.
you just didn't feel the stakes. You didn't feel the weight. You didn't feel the import of this. Not even in the time. The time is 35 minutes. It's ridiculous for a finale.
I think I would have taken it a little further, Jeff. Once Grogu had exploded Moff Gideon's head, scanner style.
Yes.
I think you cut to the clone chambers, you realize who's in there, and then all of their heads explode, and you realize that's how powerful Grogu is.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's
Like
like,
a gremlin in the microwave.
That's great. See, that would have been funny and scary at the same time. Like, that's how good this guy is. So whoever is left to fight in the next season and be the big
But
bad,
they don't have the balls.
And
watch
that
out
would
for
be-
Grogu.
And what
They
would
don't
have
have the
been
balls to
actually
do that.
what it would have been actually good about that is that only us, the viewer, see that.
Yeah,
Like, because they're in another room altogether.
That's right.
But only we
Mhm.
see that reverberate.
Mhm.
And maybe
Right.
even
Yes.
Grogu doesn't know. Nobody
Yeah,
knows
see-
except us, the viewer.
When was the last time Star Wars used dramatic irony? I guess the spy this season, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the one. Like, oh, we know she's bad, but nobody else does.
yeah.
That's it, though. Like they don't.
I
do that
would
very
say
well.
there's a more recent example. The Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
That entire series was dramatic irony because I was like, cool,
Yeah.
a show about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh no.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But to your point, if I dare to interject for a second, that would have been a new step for Star Wars to go after 40 years to say,
Agreed.
okay, we're going to up the ante a little bit here in a prestige kind of way, or even a little touch of Cronenberg. Why not get everybody, to be
Safe.
off, get away from the safeness and all the minutia that and like let's show the Jedi to have some real implications here. Like, given the right context, like Superman, in Red Sun, when he's suddenly doing the bidding for the communists, suddenly, oh my God, we've got a nuclear weapon here in this little kid, and he doesn't even realize what he's doing yet. And
Yeah.
I don't know if we're now
Even a
the
little-
enemy.
even a little bright
just
burn,
those questions
know?
might have been interesting for another season or a movie, as opposed to good
Yeah.
guys versus bad guys. Of
That's
course,
all you're gonna get.
the Force wins.
Well, I think and this it was brought up earlier, the connectivity to other shows. Like we've got Ahsoka coming up. She didn't appear in this episode. Was she even in this season?
no.
No.
No, not a trace.
She's busy.
There was mention of Thrawn. I think
He's not
I'm
shown
thinking of
either.
the trailer that I saw of Ahsoka, so that's why I've got
Right.
these
Yeah.
kind of images. But it just seems like, much like with what I know of Marvel Phase 4, which is not a lot, that deadline's
You're
coming up
not, you
soon.
took the right year off. Let me tell you.
Well, but it's just there's not a cohesive, like, overarching vision. It's just kind of like everyone's going to kind of do their own thing, and
It's
we'll bring in
recessions,
like some
yeah.
writer to write an Easter egg or two to connect these things so it's all one universe. I get the feeling that Mando, even though there's elements in this season that paint a larger picture of what's going on in the galaxy politically,
Mhm.
it feels like they dropped the ball on connecting all these other TV shows and projects they have coming
Yeah.
up. Like,
It's
have a
un-Disney-like,
stinger. Like have Admiral
Yeah.
Thrawn or whoever he's going to be get the news about, kill off Moff Gideon, just
defeated
do
Gideon,
it.
right?
Because I am, as much as I love Giancarlo Esposito, this is the third time is the charm kind of thing. Like, if they're not
If you
going
can't
to
do it
much
now,
with him, well, they could. They
stop.
probably will try and bring him back in some form, but I don't know that I care, because it's like this feels
Yeah.
like it was his big shot to be the
Yeah.
big bad, and
Yeah.
they phasmid him. But yeah, have Thrawn get the news that Gideon is. They could do a Thanos at the end of the
Yep.
Avengers.
Mhm.
The
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
scene was
Or
like,
even the
totally.
Shadow Council. And they're like, well, I guess we got to, who's going to tell Thrawn?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's a good thought. That would have been
Yeah.
a great scene.
And
Because even
oh,
Obi-Wan ended with that Darth Vader coda of talking to the Emperor and writing a
Right.
ship of his mission on Mustafar. Like,
Mhm.
if you can do that scene for 35 seconds, you do something with Thrawn.
was Thrawn force sensitive, or he was just an alien who
He-
was a
he's-
high-ranking admiral? I never read the books.
same
Rather
here.
than showing Grogu, again raising a frog out of the waters, which is a repeated gag. It's kind of funny that's any, have have the Mandalorian get his first call, his first freelance assignment. There's, throw on his back, or whomever is somehow he's placed into action again. And
somehow
maybe
Palpatine returned.
Well, but I mean, somehow that
Grogu showed up in that hallway to save Mando when he's being taken away in custody. Like, where did he come from?
Exactly. I mean, the tendency these days in season enders is to set up the next season. Even though you've satisfactorily closed off the finale, you set the next thing up. I mean, my God, even Only Murders in the Building does that very well and has done that 2 seasons running. Here it's just like Country Time Lemonade on the porch. Maybe that's the end of it. I don't know.
Well, and the whole thing going back to the Grogu thing with you wouldn't even have to have him killed. You could just have him injure or start to injure Moff Gideon, and then the ship takes him out the rest of the way. So Grogu's just about to kill him or whatnot. And then you cut to your cut scene after the credits where Thrawn gets the notice that not only is, Moff Gideon dead, but according to reports, he was killed by a Jedi. Boom. Now Thrawn knows there's some kind of Jedi out there. Thrawn goes. I mean, you could set up the whole 4th season with just changing a number of minor parts to this finale to where you could open it up to a very interesting 4th season and make this season 3 relevant, because in all honesty, in the grand scheme things of Star Wars, this does not feel relevant, especially how we know that a few years later or whenever, Mandalorians are vacant from the entire galaxy, some way, shape, or form. They never show up again.
Mark, you hit on some. I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
Well, they spent the whole season really with him and Grogu as a tag along. Sorry, buddy. Mando trying to help Bo-Katan and the other Mandalorians claim Mandalore again, and they spent all that time kind of uniting all these factions of Mandalorians, which was interesting. But obviously the title character becomes a side character in all that for many episodes, and then after that it's like, well, it's kind of like Han Solo at the end of New Hope. It's like, I'm out of here, and you don't have any moment where Bo-Katan's like, what do you mean, you're just gonna leave? You're one of us. You couldn't have had that moment where the two of them talk. You had that interesting moment, I think, a couple episodes ago, where it's like, your story's not written yet.
That's
and I'm gonna be.
How Beskar panties aren't dropping when he says that, I have no clue.
I don't want to think about those. It'd be like the chastity belt and Robin Hood Men in Tights.
And then it's hilarious that he goes back to Navarro, because it's like it's the new Tatooine, right? He goes back to Navarro. And he already declined a piece of land on Navarro. So why is he going back there? He didn't want it. And now he does. It's like,
that's a good point. I forgot he turned that. Well, maybe he figured it's been a long day. I need a cabin.
I also oh, good. Please.
No, I was just going to say is that the whole series started. I mean, the season started with him wanting to be taken in and proven as a Mandalorian once again.
Like Minnetonka.
So what do you do at the end of the season? He doesn't stay with the Mandalorians that he's played and talked about, not just this season, but over the course of the entire series, wanting to get back to Mandalore, get back to his roots, be with the Mandalorians, his people, earn their respect. And once he does it, peace.
Here's
the thing, though. But Mark, I had mentioned this a couple episodes ago. Maybe it was like 4 episodes when I still had hope. Wouldn't it be a nice twist of fate if Mando, who's only wanted to get back with his people, finally gets back with his people and realizes he doesn't want to be with them. And then Bo-Katan, who's kind of like separated from this, freaky religion, she finds a home there and becomes, very devout and connected. I feel like they kind of did that, but they didn't earn it or have it make any sense. Like, as we're talking about here, Mando's just like, chilling on the porch away from his people. There's no big dramatic goodbye. And as far as the sequel trilogy goes, Mark, you touched on this, 20 years from now in the story, no one's going to have heard of Mandalorians anymore because they're not mentioned in the sequel trilogy really at all. I was thinking throughout most of season 3, is this building to Gideon comes to full power, or Thrawn or whoever, and they succeed in wiping out the Mandalorians. That's why we never hear from them again. Given the quality of the writing of this series, I have a feeling that there's not going to be anything like that. They're all going to be alive at the end of the Avengers-style movie or whatever, and they're just not going to mention it. Like, oh yeah, they just weren't around, or they're off in a different sector of space. There was no big dramatic, culling or anything like that. We just don't care.
Yeah, I didn't see any Slave One at the end of
it's
the Skywalker
Boba Fett's
saga.
Starship, sir. It's Boba Fett's starship now.
By the way, I would like to just throw in one thought. It might be my last one. Maybe you won't invite me back after this because it's going to be a touch controversial. Star
Wars is not better than Star Trek, Jeff.
After Beskar panties,
or the other way around.
The card finale is better than this.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. But Ian, I love the fact that you know me so well already. I am going to say the one thing, though, that I think could help Star Wars as they now go into their 4th or 5th decade, whatever it is. And that is to take a page a little bit from, yes, the Star Trek playbook. And that is that Star Trek, when they would end episodes, movies, things like that, there was always a sense that what they were doing was going to lead to a better tomorrow and change. And one of the things... What?
Go ahead.
It's true.
That's true if you watch all the shows.
Right. Totally. No.
They leave where Star Wars, I think, very often kind of retreats almost into the sort of Shane thing. Like, well, the hero goes off on his own because he can only be alone, or he stops doing it, or wanders the deserts forever, Obi-Wan and stuff like that. But to me, there was also a better opportunity, since this was so much about the Mandalorian population. And when they not only took Boca's helmet off because she was the new leader and she can work in both worlds, but she's also Katie and we want to see her. Right. In a Star Trek world, or page end of the thing here, she would have said, you know what? It's time for a new way. I want to see everybody and I want to share who you are. And this helmeted stuff, even just for Hollywood starsmanship, should have been like, this is the new way. That's the way Star Trek would have ended this. Instead, it's just, well, again, half the people are wearing their helmets and half aren't, and we don't get to see Pedro Pascal, even though he's the hottest actor in Hollywood right now. And it's all just, we're retired and withdrawing, as you said, and going away. I just wish there was a sense of the bigger picture sometimes and moving it forward in a way at one of the end of these, like, okay, I've won this battle, but guess what? There's governing to be done here, or a future that could be better. And hey, as a woman Mandalorian who's a leader now and all this kind of stuff, let's remove our helmets when we're not fighting. I just
think of the celebrity cameos that were.
Well, but there's something to think about there. That's something to think about. Like, okay, she's already making a better place for her people in the world. I mean, there is a sense of, prejudice and discrimination against them and limits into this one place where they fit, that Star Trek was always about. No, this is a wide open galaxy and you can be part of it. I don't know, that I miss some of that kind of stuff in Star Wars, especially here.
But the thing is, it's I don't know if you could really miss it though, because has it ever been there? I mean, Star Trek and Star Wars are like apples and oranges. Yeah. It's just like if you want to compare DC and Marvel, it's.
But after 40 years, I think they could once in a while maybe do something a little bit that keeps everybody sort of surprising. Like, wow, that's something to think about and talk about. Versus like, was this true to the lore? Oh my God, let's break the lore a little bit.
Well, hey, Star Trek has its own share of.
And they broke too much. Spock should never have written the Kabayushi Maru. That was silly. But the shows were better about broadening the thinking.
I would like to say that there was an attempt to do that exact thing that was shut down by toxic fanboys at the end of The Last Jedi.
You are correct.
That's true.
The Last Jedi.
That was the only movie that was trying something different.
That had balls.
Yeah. The Last Jedi actually ends with a similar Star Trek opening.
You're right.
Where you don't have, at the end of Last Jedi, you don't have light side and dark side. You just have Force users. You have people who are trying to live correctly but are Force sensitive, and it can be almost anyone. When the kid grabs the broom, I got excited. The ship takes off. I'm like, okay, we've tied up and the way it felt at the end, regardless of its warts, the way it felt at the end, Luke passed, Leia passed, Solo passed in the previous. We've pretty much ended that saga. We've started a new one with this new crew who play both sides of the Force when needed and are able to control it, and gives you opportunity for that gray area of just expanding that. They tried that and everyone went, whoa.
Yeah, fanboy toxic.
And then what happened? Let's all say it. Somehow Palpatine returned.
Right. And then Palpatine.
Yeah, but that didn't please the fanboys either.
Well,
Again,
no.
it's the story of the man going to town with his kid and the donkey. Okay. If you play to the fanboys, you're not even playing to good storytelling half the time. You have to do something that's good for the narrative. And after 40 years, I think that would have been better. I think the Force is greater than just a weapon. It isn't an AK-47. It's a religion, and they forget that. Yeah. They forget that more often than not. It just becomes a way to vanquish the bad guy with a better lightsaber skill, which is bullshit.
Do you think they're too little, too late? Because like coming out of Star Wars Celebration, that new Daisy Ridley movie is supposed to be this explore the new, I don't want to say religious
Jedi
side,
Order.
but a new Jedi Order. Are there new tenets and pillars possible from there? But is that 3 movies too late for Daisy Ridley?
Well, it's weird because they announced 3 new Star Wars movies coming out of Celebration, but it's not a new trilogy, and they didn't. I haven't heard talk about. Well, if each of these does well, they could kick off a new series of trilogies. It's all just like, okay, Days. So Rey is gonna, it's a few years on. She's older. She's wiser. She's training up Jedi. Against what? Are we going to be? We're going to introduce a new Jedi Academy, a new threat, and it's going to be wrapped up at the end of one movie, or is it going to be? Well, if this does well, we've got things lined up for 3 more. I'm just.
Star Wars Maverick.
I'm tired. There. Hey, bring them all back as Force Ghosts 35 years later and have them fly around. I would watch the hell out of that. What, Mark?
If you look at the schedule that they released at Celebration, it confused the hell out of me because I'm like looking at this going, well, this is going to take place during this time period, this time period, like in between. And I'm like,
what's the one with Jude Law? What's that about? Skeleton crew.
And
that's like,
there's like that, and then there's the
Acolyte.
Yeah, there's a few like weird things going on there too. I think one of them's a TV show, but
and looking at that sporadicness, I'm like, why do we keep going back to and don't get me wrong, again, this is ingrained in my DNA. Why do we still keep going back to the same original trilogy time period? They've got at least 3 shows, if I looked at that schedule correctly, that fits within between the movies. I'm like, well, why? Give me the story from 200 years ago.
That is one of them.
That's what Acolyte is. Yeah.
Right, but that's just one of them. I mean, there's a trilogy sitting there right there, or a whole series you could explore, or go 200 years in the future and explore what happened to Jedi and the Force. Maybe the Force is everywhere and everybody uses it, or no one. I mean,
or Mark, as I've said before, remember there's an S on the end of Wars. It's not Star War, the same battle, over the course of the same characters and their arc. It's like, let's find another corner of the galaxy and fight there,
I think Star Wars needs to take, and this isn't going to happen because it's in the hands of the mouse. I think Star Wars needs to take a good 20-year nap.
Not a chance.
I know, but here's the thing.
I'm with you though. I hear what you're saying.
When I was a kid, if you told me that there's going to be like Star Wars movies and TV shows like every year for like a decade plus, I would have lost my damn mind. But now it's like I'm just on a straight diet of candy. It's too much, and I feel like I'm gonna watch. I was jazzed to do an Ahsoka recap show halfway through this season of Mandalorian, and now I feel like we might do an episode and take it week by week.
Fair enough.
I'm wondering if there's enough. There's enough with Ahsoka that maybe can. I hate to use the 4-letter word, but hope about like maybe just something different. And that maybe it won't tie into, it's like, because the problem is, with the show, and I don't know how they're going to do this, but, Ian hasn't watched Clone Wars, hasn't watched Rebels. So there's all these, a live action so-and-so. Okay, but that's only exciting for so many people.
Well, it's weird. You mentioned that, David, because I watched the trailer for Ahsoka and I thought it was okay, but I was looking at stuff online, like, oh my God, like all these people from Rebels was in the like the live action version. Like I didn't recognize anybody, and I'm pretty sure I would imagine they were talking about some of the main crew from the ship, but it didn't. It's like, oh, it's just a bunch of chicks in goggles. You know, they all look the same. Like, what?
And I haven't watched Rebels, so I saw the trailer and it looked interesting. I've just seen all of the Clone Wars because I dug that, but you know, it's one of those things where Obi-Wan, Book of Boba, and even this season of Mando, it's almost feeling like they feel like they have to, like they're not doing it because but they're not doing it because they actually have a real story to tell.
Yeah,
and it's not even just because they can. It feels like they have to. They feel the need that they need to crank out all this Star Wars content constantly to stay relevant when they don't realize they've built a fan base up for 40 years. It's just like when I talk about horror fans. I'm like, you could not release a horror movie in the theater for 5 months. You release one, you're going to make everybody's going to flock to it, even if it's a crap.
Away makes the heart grow fonder.
But here's a thought based on what you said, Ian, which I think is very accurate. You know, it's like Syndrome said in The Incredibles, when everyone's super, no one will be. If every show is, you know, there's so much familiarity and so much regularness to it, Star Wars becomes less special. And to your point, Don, the mouse is never going to say, stop making money. Are you insane?
You need the only way you need fans to punch them in the wallet, and they won't.
But what I was going to say you could do then is as a creator, you have to zag instead of zig. And that is to what we've been saying for many, many episodes. And even before I joined the show is like, then show me a different story that has nothing to do with this one. So it feels different, because then it'll be like discovering a new thing of Star Wars. Like, these are all new characters. This is a whole new conflict. This has nothing to do with this one thing. Okay, there's the Force in here, but it's used only for peacekeeping measures or whatever the hell. I mean, I'm winging it here, but do those kind of things. I think that's the trouble with any of these franchises. They constantly want to beat the same drum because that's what the fans love. But I don't agree with that. I think the fans are expecting that. But if you show them something different, I think you end up having an opportunity to do different things. I mean, here's what I would suggest to Favreau and all these people. White Lotus this. White Lotus has a theme of skullduggery and bad behavior and rich people in these gorgeous settings who are terrible people. But they changed the characters and the locations. American Horror Story has been doing that for a decade. I think Star Wars needs to be plural. Go somewhere else where none of the same characters are and create me 10 new ones that I'll fall in love with the same way I fall in love with all these other people. And maybe they're not even from the books. Same with, you know, the world of Star Trek or other franchises. Do something different. I mean, I think it's just incredible that Paranormal Activity, just to borrow a page from the horror issue, kept telling the same story of these two girls the whole time. That is not the idea of Paranormal Activity. No. It's that ghosts invade your home or wherever they can. It could be a dormitory. It could be a football stadium. It
janitor's closet.
A janitor's closet. It could be an Alaskan getaway cab, an Alaskan cabin. The point is, a ghost shows up in a place where you wouldn't expect it and demonstrates paranormal activity. Not, you know, these two girls were raised by a cult of Satanists. What? Well, nobody gives a shit about those characters.
Right.
You got to broaden it.
Well, that comes down to exactly what we're talking about here, which is the sequel syndrome, the pressure of money. I mean, when George Lucas, you know, warts and all, he controlled Star Wars since its inception until he sold it to Disney in 2013 or whatever it was. So he could have the breathing room to say, look, I did Jedi and then I did some like Ewoks TV movies and a droids cartoon show, but then I let it lay dormant until the special effects technology caught up to my vision for what the series could be.
Edition,
well, okay, he did the special edition. That was like putting his toe in the water, and I have my issues with those, but it was still within his control. He didn't feel the pressure to have something to keep Star Wars on the public consciousness because it was so much a fabric of our pop consciousness. I feel like the problem with Star Wars is, you know, Don mentioned punching him in the wallet. I think we might see that coming because we're starting to see it with the Marvel movies and comic book movies in general.
But until they take a legit haircut.
Well, what I'm saying is let's see how many of these 3 movies end up in theaters versus it's a Disney Plus special event times 3.
Fair
Yeah,
point.
to bounce off quick what Jeff was saying, have you seen Visions? I think it's called Visions.
Yeah,
For the Star Wars, yeah.
The anime Star Wars series.
That's pretty good.
Not all of them were great, but there are a few gems in there that do exactly what we've been talking about here. They do story. There's one story on Tatooine, but there's a number of stories that involve the Force that have nothing to do whatever we saw before. I still make it I will sit on that hill and scream to my top of my lungs. I want a Ninth Jedi series. There's this wonderful series that adds a lot to the Jedi lore because it's years and years later since the saga where they talk about lightsabers and your alignment affects the color of the lightsaber and how this one character ends up thinking they're gathering force. It's a fascinating story, and the episode's not that long, but it explored another facet. There's another one where there's an older mentor and a younger Jedi who go to a village to help in a completely foreign designed ship we've never seen before. And that plays out not like you expect it to. I mean, and the reason I bring it up is they've got a season 2, which I'm very excited for to come out with. And there's a couple batshit crazy ones in there. There's one involving twins, which I love because it's just so anime out there. But it shows right there, that series, that you could do other stories, what you're talking about, Jeff, and make them Star Wars and make them enjoyable and make you want more of that. You know,
and what was the animated one recently? Was it Tales of the Jedi or something? Like
Tales of the Jedi.
That was pretty good. You had a young Dooku hanging out with Qui-Gon, and it was pretty cool. Yeah,
I think they're gonna, if they were to try something like that, I think they're gonna run into their Andor problem, which is they have Mandalorian season 2, which not everyone was happy with. I thought it was pretty good, but then you follow that up with Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, which were some exceptions, of course, but it was pretty much universally panned by the fan base. But then you have Andor, which is I only watched the first episode of it and I got busy. I really enjoyed it, but I heard great things about that entire 12 episodes, and it was really different. It was a different side of Star Wars, but nobody showed up for it because it'd been burned so much.
Jeff, have you seen Andor?
I have not.
Yeah.
Neither have I.
You might like it.
Catch up.
Okay, I'll check it. Check
Andor,
it out.
It's a prequel era Star Wars, right? Yeah, the build up to Rogue One. But they do, from what I saw in that first episode, they do take it stylistically and narratively into some pretty cool places that don't feel like Star Wars necessarily.
It's like a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy goes to Navarone type thing.
Yeah. You get lot more Mon Mothma and what she did in the Senate. You get some of that stuff where you get the political stuff, but they make it interesting. And class and that. Yeah, Andor explored.
What's really great is, not to knock the digital stuff and everything, but none of this volume stuff. It's mostly shot on location, which was really, really helpful.
Helps.
Yeah. Well, I do want to leave off with, we were talking about like endings or post-credit scenes and Thrawn. What if you'd gone back to that hologram, the Shadow Council, and you had all of them talking about what happened to Moff Gideon? Again, let's just pretend that he's actually dead. And then someone finds out, speculates that Thrawn might be displeased. That's why I asked if he was a Force user.
Right.
Because imagine that whole like Hollow Council meeting, and then one person begins to choke, and then another person begins to choke, and eventually all 8 of them choke, and then the holograms flicker, and they all gradually go out, and you're just left with this cold, empty, dark chamber. And that's your introduction to Thrawn. I know he appeared in the Ahsoka trailer, but I don't think we've actually, aside from having him be mentioned at some point, like in passing, we haven't really seen him introduced. I think that'd be a great Thanos-style introduction.
Not live action. He was in Rebels, but that's about it.
Right.
And this Kane character in this show, it's like, now that Gideon's gone, what's she gonna do?
Yeah,
what?
And she didn't do anything in this episode.
Yeah, she
wasn't even in it. Yeah, she was in the last episode. She showed up to talk to the droid
for 2 minutes, or even that 20 seconds, and she was the singular spy there. See, they have trouble with those plurals, don't they?
And what about that Carson Teva guy? Okay, the rebel in New Republic. Is he always hanging out at the bar? Because it's like, no, I mean, the end of that one episode. The end of that one episode, he's actually legitimately doing some, and doing some detective work and finding out, oh, they used Beskar armor. That's it. It would have been nice to just have one thing where Grogu and Mando go back to that planet where they're all just hanging out and doing nothing, and they're hanging out at the bar. And it would have been nice if this Carson Teva guy would have said, like, yeah, I'm glad you got rid of Gideon, because it turns out, we did some research and, he used Beskar and this and that, just so there was some type of like follow-up to his investigation,
Yeah.
And when is a bar lit that well?
or even better, you follow interjection in between these scenes with them trying to take Mandalore, with him still doing his investigation, following breadcrumbs, and him coming to the realization, like, say, end of episode Steven said, before Gideon reveals himself, he realizes Gideon is alive. So he heads to Mandalore to help them and give warning to Mando. So you bring it around so that you don't have.
And then he dies, so we can actually have some stakes in this damn show. Well, let's pull over a second. I want to say, I think it'd be really cool to have. We're talking about different ideas for Star Wars. How about Star Wars version of Cheers? I'm just in that
sometimes you wanna go.
Tales from the was it
to a galaxy far, far away?
No, they did a Tales from the Cantina. There's a book. One of the three Tales of they did a Tales of the Cantina, Tales of the Mos Eisley.
It's because that's on Tatooine, and that would not work for me.
Boy.
All right, look, guys.
Tatooine returned.
Compliments to the panel here. The ideas that you guys have been submitting and we've been talking about here are not like crazy fanboy. Wouldn't it be cool if this and then that and then this? They're basic good storytelling ideas that I think would have helped this on the most basic sort of one-on-one level. Ian, your post-credit sequence, like, again, I think Marvel has kind of crapped away the importance and the effectiveness of some of those because there's too many of them. But that's the kind of ending you want, like, oh, okay. So we all thought Moff Gideon was a threat. Maybe not so much. But boy, this guy coming up is a big ass deal, and he just cleared out the council, and that's the repercussions for failing him. Suddenly, you go like, okay, Mando, I don't think you're going to be sitting on that porch sipping country time lemonade much longer. Better get Grogu to learn how to crush heads like tin cans pretty fast, because you're going to need all the help you can get.
And what if you just do it? I know this is maybe playing the fandom a little bit, but even if you wanted to do that, have Kane, I think that was her name, right? That the spy. We come back to her. She gets a recording. Say she's got a hollow disc or whatever. They have a group of people. She plays it. They make mention something of, it took me a while to get this, but here is our last order. And she puts it in, and it's Palpatine giving the first order. And you kick off the idea of the first order. I mean, if you want to still play with the fanboys, but do a little bit of a stinger, fine. If you don't want to do Thrawn, give her something to where all of a sudden you're like, now you've got a purpose and an underlying threat, because this ends, I have no threat. It's like what Ian said. There was no real stakes in the game to begin with, because they killed all the clones like immediately, and Gideon supposedly died. And even if they come back with him again, it's like, come on, come up with a new villain. There's nothing. You end this, you're like, oh, the galaxy's all in order now.
Yeah.
Well,
did you guys see? Sorry, did you guys see some of the write up today about how, like, did you see how they recast Cara Dune in this episode? I'm like, what? What are you talking about? They're saying they recast Cara Dune with the IG droid, who became like the marshal on Navarro.
Oh,
like, come on!
That's the kind of stuff that, it's easy
minutia.
That minutia is easy to dismiss, but the bigger storytelling ideas. I mean, I like Ian's ending. I think that would have been a great setup for the next series or just the next villain.
Yeah,
I think I kind of like what Mark's. Thank you, Jeff. But I kind of like what Mark's pointing out there too, because at least it would have given some acknowledgement to some of these other threads they opened up throughout the series, like with the rise and corruption of the New Republic.
Yep.
You've got Kane running around out there, and this underground network that might not have anything to do with this Shadow Council. They might be in league. It might be, separate factions working against each other. It's all just like, hey, now we've got Ahsoka coming up, and that might have anything to do with it. Look, it's 9:15 when we're recording this, so I'm going to let everybody go. I appreciate all of your time. When the hell does Ahsoka come out? How much time do I have to drink and grieve?
Yeah.
August. Okay.
Yeah. Go.
We may be back with more. It'll be the so-so Ahsoka show.
You should call it a case by case basis.
Yes, a case by case. Oh my gosh, that might be it, Don. Unfortunately, but thank you guys. The melting
Ahsoka you once, Ahsoka you every time.
Yikes. All right. Well, all right. Thank you everybody for
in honor of Annie Banks.
Yeah, well, Annie, we'll get her back on the show.
That was my Annie Banks pun.
Well, point take. David, you're distracting me with
Ahsoka me once, shame on you. Ahsoka me twice, shame on me.
Ahsoka, if you got him.
Oh, nice.
There you go.
You can go all day.
I could. I'm like Steve Rogers in that way. Anyway, I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Don Shanahan of Film Obsessive and Cinephile Hissy Fit podcast, and the site that started it all. I think every movie has a lesson.
That's the one.
And Jeff York of The Establishing Shot, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, and later to the party, man, Mark Krajak of The Spoiler Room.
The pervy man.
Yes. Sorry, yes. Good callback. Thanks, everybody. This has been the season 3 finale episode of What If He Doesn't Survive. We're done doing the live streams for this show, but we're not done doing live streams because
wait, let's
next
get to
Thursday,
the comments.
Huh? Oh, there were comments. Look, here's a testament. I'm not taking it personally. I'm taking it as a sign of interest in the Mandalorian.
All right, not us.
Right. Viewership is like, wow. Because the first 2 seasons were like pretty strong. But
good,
no, I do want to say that next Thursday, I will be back here, hopefully with some panelists talking about The Evil Dead Rise. The new horror movie that opens up this weekend. So we'll be back talking about that 8:00 Central. And hopefully you'll join us back then. And please like and subscribe to this channel and support all my lovely Earth's Mightiest Critics. Yes, press the button.
yes.
I'm going to buy that toy when it comes out just so I can press the button and listen to it. That'll be a new Hallmark Christmas ornament, I guarantee, in December. But anyway, this has been What If He Doesn't Survive. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out, as always. And may the force be